Hey, everybody, and thank you for joining this week's Free Assange Online Vigil. This is our 67th week of promoting the freedom of Julian Assange. We do have special guest with us, Ray McGovern, and we will be reviewing the El Masri statement from Julian's trial later on this evening. But first, to run through the numbers with everyone, it is day 3,599 of the illegal and arbitrary detention of Julian Assange. It is day 553 since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy to Belmarsh prison following the $4.2 billion IMF loan to the nation of Ecuador. There's 84 days left until Judge Vanessa Baratzer makes her decision on Julian's case, which will be January 4th, 2021. There is 1,224 days of federal incarceration for Reality Winner. And in the good news, it is day 210 of freedom for Chelsea Manning. And as always, she does have a Twitch stream that she does Thursdays through Sundays from, I believe, 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're on Twitch or would be interested in going and checking her out, you can find her at XYChelsea87 over on Twitch. But real quick, this week's call to action is just promoting everyone to take action a second time on some of the previous ones that we've put out, including Tulsi Gabbard's recent bills with Congressman Massey about the Espionage Act, Julian Assange, and Edward Snowden, as well as other things like the Pardon Attorney's Office and asking the Trump administration to pardon Julian Assange. But with that, I would like to say good day to you, Steve. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm hanging in there, man. I am. I do want to. I'm going to take a second here, real quick, because we read numbers off at the beginning of every vigil, and I just want people to realize the scope of that, of how long 3,600 days are. Like, that's just shy of 10 years, and that's how long Julian Assange has been illegally and arbitrarily detained. If you want a neat thought experiment, go back in your minds to where you were 3,600 days ago, and to what the world was like 3,600 days ago, and think about everything that you've done and everything that you've seen in those 3,600 days, and then compare that to the dimensions of the rooms in the Ecuadorian embassy and a 7x9 cell in Belmarsh. And I just kind of reflect on that for a minute, if you would. You don't have to do it now because we have a show, but just when you have a moment, when you have some quiet time, if quiet time is a part of your life. It's not a part of my life. But yeah, I mean, it just we've been doing this now 67 consecutive weeks, and I occasionally will find myself like thinking about that and dwelling on it, but I don't know if I've ever mentioned it during a broadcast before, and I wanted to kind of put that out there. Misty, how you?
I'm good. I think it's also important to put in perspective. Each of us is only gifted a certain number of days. And so if you think about, spending that many of your days isolated, alone, in pain, going through all of the things that he's going through, that's a significant portion of his life that he has given up. Really, that's been taken from him. But the sacrifice that he's made, and I don't know that people always think about those perspectives. So yeah, I'm glad you actually brought that up, because when you said that, I was just sitting here thinking back to where was I, and I'm like, holy crap, what have we? I mean, I've done so many things in those number of days, and to think about spending that amount of time in such a tiny spot is really, it's a lot to take in. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that perspective up, because I don't know that we've ever really talked about that.
So with no further you, please welcome back to the Free Assange Vigil, the I guess the head wizard in charge here. The founder of Beards for Assange and veteran intelligence professionals for sanity, Mr. Ray McGovern. How are you, sir? It's fantastic to see you again.
I'm really glad to be back with you, and I'm very happy that Steve made that little human relationship to what's real. I've been in that embassy. I haven't been in Belmarsh. I hope not to end up there. But, you know, I can imagine, well, I can't imagine. None of us can imagine how bad that is. And as I've said before, I think if it weren't for Gabriel and Max and Stella, I don't know if Julian would be hanging on so steadfastly as he is now. He has a lot to live for, and we have a lot to make sure that he does live in freedom. And I still hope, I still trust that this will come out in a way that will allow him to live a normal life after all the deprivations that he's been subjected to. You know, one of the things that people sort of know, but not really, is that after Julian divulged the Afghan war logs and the Iraqi similar war logs, email, we, Sam Adams Associates for Integrity and Intelligence, decided to give Julian our annual award. So the year was 2010. God, that's 10 years ago, huh? And we wrote a citation there, finishing up with "Long live the Fifth Estate." At the time, it seemed that the Fifth Estate, namely the internet, the web, had been constructed in such a way that it was beyond any government's control. Silly us. It's been pretty much infringed upon now, but still, the only hope we have, given the co-optation or the co-opting of the Fourth Estate and the mainstream media, it's the only way we can get the truth out, and it's the truth that will make Julian free, just like the rest of us. If I may, I'd like to read portions of the citation that we composed together with giving Julian Assange our, well, we call it our Oscar. Our Oscar is a corner brightener candlestick holder, shine light into dark places.
Okay.
Julian was our 10th awardee. Our first was Colleen Rowley of the FBI, and we're now nominating our 19th. So Julian was right in the middle. And we traditionally gave a citation with this gift, and this is the way Julian's read. It has some historical context. That's one reason why I think it would be a good idea. It seems altogether fitting and proper that this year's award be presented in London, where Edmund Burke coined the expression Fourth Estate, comparing the function of the press to that of the three houses then in Parliament. Burke said, quote, "In the reporters' gallery yonder, there sits a fourth estate, far more important than all of us." Whoa. Okay, so there are two houses in Commons. There's one in Lords. And what Burke is saying, and he was no small player here, look, the press, those people who sit yonder in the balcony, that's the fourth estate, and they are, quote, more important than we all. The year was 1787, the year the U.S. Constitution was adopted. The First Amendment, approved 4 years later, aimed at ensuring that the press would be free of government interference. That was then. With the Fourth Estate now on life support, this is 10 years ago, there's a high premium on the fledgling Fifth Estate, which uses the ether and is not susceptible of government or corporation control. Small wonder that governments with lots to hide feel very threatened. It has been said, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. WikiLeaks is helping make that possible by publishing documents that do not lie. Parenthetically, Dan Ellsberg, my good friend, always said, you need documents. You need documents. Don't come out whistleblower without documents, okay? And we appealed to everyone back in 2004, okay, 6 years prior to this. Please, if you're going to whistleblow, bring documents or nobody's going to believe you. Now, what happened? Oh, my God, documents on steroids. What's the difference? The difference was that Dan Ellsberg, back in 1970, had used a Xerox machine. And he wore out about 3 Xerox machines copying the Pentagon Papers. I mean, it was a laborious, he had his children helping him at night. And then he had to trot around and have his friends give them to the New York Times and later Washington Post and the others. So the state of the art has improved to the point where not only are documents able to be out there into the ether and into somebody's inbox, but it can be done instantaneously. So Dan Ellsberg's fondest wish came true when Julian appeared on the scene and figured out how to do this. Now, his father very, very movingly says, you know, we sat around the kitchen table and he said, I got a good idea, Dad. And he explained this to me, make documentary evidence available to the public. And his father said, sounds like a damn good idea. And Julian was off and running. Just to continue the citation here, last spring, when we chose WikiLeaks and Julian Assange for this award, Julian said he would accept only on behalf of his sources, without which WikiLeaks contributions are of no significance. That's typical Julian, okay? That's typical Julian. That is for himself. He's not in a head trip. He says, I'm not going to take this unless it's also for the sources, because without sources, I'm nothing, or WikiLeaks is nothing. Now, at that time, Bradley or Chelsea Manning was being tried, so we weren't about to say he was the one that gave it to they gave all that stuff to WikiLeaks. But we say we don't know if Madling was the one that gave the gun barrel video of July 12, 2007, called Collateral Murder. And if any of you audience have not seen that, you really, really, really do need to see that. Whoever did provide that graphic footage showing the brutality of the celebrated surge to prevent us from losing while Bush was in power, the surge into Iraq was certainly far more patriot than the mainstream journalists embedded in that same army unit. Okay, again, very few people know this, but there was a mainstream journalist with that unit. He was a Fink. His name was Finkel, okay? He's a big Washington Post guru now, okay? He was with that unit. He wrote a book about what a wonderful unit this was. He saw the videotape and did say diddly. That's the fourth estate, okay? Moribund, dead. And Julian comes along. Chelsea Manning gives him the videotape. And the rest of us know how brutal this war was. I mean, killing children, killing Reuters correspondents, not caring, making fun of things. You know, not only were the Iraqi people in that footage brutalized, but if you listen to those American soldiers, they have been brutalized too. I'm not sure, but I hope that they have conscience enough to realize how they had been brainwashed into killing innocent people. So brutalization is the name of the game, and it affects everyone. Let me just finish here. Oh yeah, this Finkel, he was embedded in that same army unit, and he suppressed what happened at Baghdad that day, dismissed it simply as, quote, one bad day in a surge that was filled with such bad days, end quote. And then he had the temerity to lavish praise on the unit in a book he called, quote, The Good Soldiers, period, end quote. Julian is right to emphasize that the world is deeply indebted to patriotic truth-tellers like the sources who provided the gun barrel footage and many other documents on Afghanistan and Iraq to WikiLeaks. We hope to have a chance to honor him in person with this award in the future. Today, we honor WikiLeaks and one of its leaders, Julian Assange, for their ingenuity in creating a new highway by which important documentary evidence can make its way quickly and confidentially through the ether and into our inboxes. Long live the Fifth Estate, presented this 23rd day of October 2010 in London, England, by admirers of the Sam Adams patriot who tried to stop the war in Vietnam. Now, maybe just a word, because it's sort of a little lighter touch here. We got this citation to Craig Murray, who was a former Sam Adams awardee. And we said, Craig, could you part with your Oscar, the corner brightener candlestick holder? Could you part with your Oscar and give the Oscar and this citation to Julian at the Frontline Club tomorrow? This was the big announcement of all the things that Julian had. And in the event, there was full to the gills with press and everything else. At the end, Craig Murray stood up courageously. Craig Murray, Ambassador Craig Murray, who most of you know, and he approached Julian and he said, Julian, here's the citation. You have won the Sam Adams Award for Integrity and Intelligence. Nobody else knew what was going on, but he accepted the award graciously. So, I was just reviewing the citation and I thought, well, that says it all, We had the Fourth Estate. Now we don't have the Fourth Estate. The Fourth Estate is more giving misinformation than helping. We have the Fifth Estate that's in great danger. And Julian, as he told his dad that day, had figured out a way to make it work, to make Dan Ellsberg's dreams come true, providing documentary evidence, documentary that no one can disavow. Another thing few people know is that when the NSA and the CIA and the FBI prepared that, quote, community intelligence assessment on Russian hacking, it was the worst piece of analysis I've ever seen, and it's been proven wrong. But when they published that thing, they gave a sort of a real left-hand compliment to WikiLeaks, because they said, now the Russians hacked. They didn't, by the way. Okay, the Russians hacked. They gave the take from the DNC to WikiLeaks, and this is the key here, since WikiLeaks has the reputation of never falsifying or doctoring any information, has incredible credibility, they went to WikiLeaks. That's why they went to WikiLeaks. Well, hello, yeah, exactly. And it was a documentary? Sure it was. So there's lots of there are a lot of hidden things that people don't know. The other thing I'll say, if I have a little bit more time, is that I've been really thinking about, well, I think I have explained to you all in the past how before 9/11, there was all kinds of information around as to what was going to happen. NSA had it, FBI had it, CIA had it. Now, we won't go into who dropped the ball or, how it happened that it wasn't prevented, but the idea is they had it, okay? Now, in these organizations, there has to be at least one or two people who have a conscience, right? And when they see their betters in Washington, for example, the FBI outfit there in Minneapolis, where Colleen Rowley was, they had this guy Moussaoui, who was training to fly a big aircraft, and he didn't care about learning how to take off or how to land. He just wanted to know how to steer it, right? And he had paid cash, and he had all kinds of other suspicious activities, right? They got him. They got him on on a violation of his right to be in the country. And then the FBI betters wouldn't let him, wouldn't let the guys in Washington wouldn't let the FBI foot soldiers go into his computer, they just wouldn't let him do that. So the head of the FBI office in Minneapolis was so upset that he said in a cable to or email to the FBI, look, we're just trying to prevent a plane from going into the World Trade Towers, for God's sake. Can't you let us get into his stuff? And he was turned down. So what's my point? My point is that we asked the foot soldiers there in Minneapolis, the FBI guys who were adroit enough to get Moussaoui, to detain him for some of the specious reason, and to want to interrogate him. And they said, would you have gone to WikiLeaks? Now this is 2001, right? WikiLeaks really wasn't set up yet. Would you have gone to WikiLeaks if it were available? And the answer was unequivocally yes. And the same with the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration team that used to go into airports and try to penetrate the airports and try to penetrate the planes. You know, the kind of team that you want to make sure tests your security. Those folks were all desperate to tell people that there was no security at these airports or in these airplanes, and they too said yes. Surely we would have gone to WikiLeaks if there was some confidential way to get this word out. Now, in those days, you were able to do that, right? And for several years after Julian won the award, there were all kinds of things that were put out. Now, the last thing that really deserves mention is that in March of 2017, someone gave, again, these are leaks, okay? Julian Assange, WikiLeaks didn't hack into anything. These are leaks. Someone leaked from the inside of the CIA, their family jewels, let's call them. It was called Vault 7, okay? And it had all kinds of these offensive, in both senses of the word, offensive cyber tools, one of which allowed the CIA to hack into a computer or a server, disguise who it was that hacked in, and leave little telltale signs pointing the blame at somebody else. And this tool was rehearsed in 5 languages: Chinese, Persian, Arabic, Korean, and Russian, Cyrillic. Huh. That's really interesting, isn't it? The New York Times wouldn't print that story. They printed other stuff about Vault 7, but not this, okay? And so Julian allowed that to go out there, and he said he had lots more. And within 2 weeks, the head of the CIA said, WikiLeaks is a non-state hostile intelligence agency, and we're going to get them. Then they leaned all over the Ecuadorians, and finally, you know the rest of that story. So this was pretty much the last big release, and now we haven't seen much. So what does that mean? Here's 2020, right? 2020, wow. So what are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to make it that they will be real tough on Julian, bring him back, extradite him from London, take him back, put him in the bottom of a hole in Colorado, and never let him see the daylight again. Now, why? Well, they're ticked off at Julian for sure, but the whole thing is a lesson to anybody who would have the temerity to even try to do this kind of thing in what seemed before to be a pretty discreet and safe way. So they're trying to put the lid on all whistleblowers. And I dare say it's more dangerous now. People don't go to even the normal correspondents or journalists like James Risen. He's got to make up stuff now about Russiagate and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't have any sources. Why? Because his sources won't talk to him, right? So it's really very sad. And the bottom line here is that if it becomes so scary for people to give documents to WikiLeaks, then we all lose. We all lose. And the last thing I'll say is that one a good example of this has just come out. The House Intelligence Committee found out on the 5th of December, 2017, that there was no hack of the Democratic National Committee emails. Okay. Now, no hack by Russia, no hack by anybody. Now, how'd they find that out? Well, the cyber firm CrowdStrike had to confess under oath, no, we didn't see any such information exfiltrated, a fancy word for hacked. Okay. Why do I say that? All those representatives, all those congressmen on the House Intelligence Committee, and their brothers and their sisters and their aunts, and so, their brothers and their sisters are there, they all know this stuff. Not one of them took the chance of telling some correspondent or even risking telling WikiLeaks. So everyone is really, really scared, and that's exactly what the name of the game is: fear. Okay, and I'm going to stop now, but if you'd like later, I could adduce an example from my own tenure as a CIA analyst, when I could have blown the whistle using WikiLeaks, but didn't blow it, not only because WikiLeaks wasn't available, but because I chickened out. Okay. So I could tell you that story later if I haven't already done, but I think I've probably talked enough for a while right now.
Somebody needs to mute. Well, that might be you.
Could you mute your microphone, Ray? I'm sorry. There's an echo coming from your side, or turn the volume down.
I don't know. Maybe it seems to be gone now. At any rate,
that's better.
We've seen exactly what we've all been predicting for, the last at least year or 3 or 5 happen already. We saw it happen with Craig Murray and his situation and the court case that he's going to have to face, and that wouldn't be possible without the broad, if not acceptance, then unawareness of what's happening to Julian Assange. And just yesterday, the BBC was trying to reach independent journalists Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett for comments, because they're about to run a story on Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett and a former UK ambassador named Peter Ford, because of reporting and statements that they've made about the White Helmets and the now deceased founder of the White Helmets, and the reporting that they've done on the West's dirty war in Syria. The BBC4 series is going to essentially be the segment producer and the host acting as the prosecution, laying out an indictment that they claim could, if not should, end up in terrorism charges for Vanessa Beeley. And she's been singled out for potential, I guess, criminal charges. As to why she's been singled out, I guess possibly she's gone a little bit deeper in the paint, but certainly not much. But this is a real-time consequence of the persecution and prosecution of Julian Assange. And while we're all here, in case you didn't see my show about this last night, I definitely wanted to bring that to people's attention. Both Vanessa and Eva will be on the Vigil here on Saturday.
Oh, great.
And we're going to be able to go into this in as much detail as they can spare in the time that they have. I feel very fortunate, despite the abject insanity of this situation that over the last year or so I've developed a professional relationship with Vanessa, and I was one of the first people that got a phone call early yesterday morning about this, so I could start raising hell and raising the alarm about it. But we're right back to square one with this, where we now need to rally around, support, and raise awareness for more journalists because of the treatment that they are potentially going to be subjected to, which again includes criminal charges under like violations of international law and aiding and abetting terrorists. This is insane.
It is insane. I will say though that I am kind of glad. Yesterday, when the word started going around, you contacted, us as Action for Assange. Whitney Webb started DMing people and talking to them about it. I felt like there was a instantaneous reaction from those of us who are kind of in those circles of, supporting Assange and journalism, and that was really cool to see. I mean, I was joking about it yesterday when I tweeted at Whitney, and I was like, assemble the Avengers, because that's what it felt like. We were all DMing each other and planning things out and trying to work together on getting interviews done and coverage done and, streaming together and working together. And it was really kind of cool to see, how those of us who have kind of been off on our own little island of independent media that actually covers this stuff, we all really did band together and like we're working together as a team. So if there's any positive to that, I would say that has been, pretty interesting to witness. And I think that our little group has really gotten kind of strong, not just Action for Assange, but, like Congo Couch and Nico and, all these other independent journalists, Richard Medhurst, people who have also been covering the Assange stuff. I think we all realize now that we all knew it was important, but we all realize now that this is it. It's us. We're not going to get a lot of other people to cover this stuff. So I feel like we've banded together as like this merry band of heathens ready to go tackle the empire, which is cool. It's fun to see, It's a big task, but still it's neat to see.
Had you heard about what's been going on with Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett, Ray? Or is this?
I had seen it on Twitter today, but just tweeted over it. I hadn't realized how serious it is. So I'm glad that you all are raising the alarm. I'm still I always ask what we can do, and that's precisely what you're doing. I wish there were more we could do. Certainly, there are some public interest legal people in London that can help them out. It's really, really pretty disastrous what's going on, and not only in London, of course, but in the States as well.
Yeah, there seems to be a ratcheting up in the West, or at least the Five Eyes countries, of essentially a war on reality, a war on truth, and the casualties of this are anyone willing to stick their neck out and speak out against the narrative.
I'm glad you bring up the ratcheting up, though, because that honestly kind of surprised me, because it does seem like it's been blown up a lot faster than I was anticipating. I thought for sure we'd at least, get to the end of the year with Assange, maybe get through, the judgment or whatever on that before they started really amping it up. But I mean, this has been going on for decades, but over the past 10 or 15 years, the war on journalism specifically has been really increased. But it's gotten a lot worse over the past, I would say 5 years, definitely, especially with social media. I mean, we were just seeing, I think, was it yesterday or today, that Facebook said that they're going to start banning any discussions of Holocaust denial. And, that's, some people may cheer for that, but then where does it go to after that? Are you then not allowed to deny Russiagate? Is that what it's going to end up as? That they're going to start banning criticism or questioning of Russiagate? And that's exactly where it's heading. The reason they're starting with something like Holocaust denial is because that is something that has broad-based support. People generally don't like people who deny the Holocaust. So that's an easy target for them. They can use that to slow walk you into this, dystopian nightmare where you don't have access to reality anymore. Like Steve said, it's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of access to reality, you recently put an article up on Consortium News about Donald Trump declassifying Russiagate, and the documents and everything surrounding it. So I wanted to just open the floor to you to talk about that a little bit, and where you think it's going to lead the media as far as actual honest coverage of what happened throughout 2016 until now.
Well, Russiagate is too big to fail, like those banks, There are so many people committed to the fable about Russiagate. They range, if you look at it, it's quite amazing. They range from Lindsey Graham right down to Jimmy Carter, for God's sake. It's gospel, it's dogma. The 17, oops, not 17, three intelligence agencies said so, but only 5 people, handpicked people from CIA and FBI wrote that. Give me a break. This is really, really serious. And so the whole thing, if people knew the facts, and that's, the most egregious example is simply this. Devin Nunes, who is head of the Intelligence Committee in the House, had to sort of step aside and let his next Democrat run the meeting. But on the 5th of December 2017, the head of CrowdStrike testified under oath. And he was asked, do you know how the Russians, how they hacked into the DNC and gave those emails to WikiLeaks? Oh, yeah, sure. Then his lawyer pulls him by the the shirt. And said, well, we're not all that sure. And then, of course, Adam Schiff says, now, Mr. Henry, his name is Sean Henry, can you tell us the date when the Russians hacked into the DNC? And Henry said, talked to his lawyer, and he said, well, actually, we don't have any evidence of exfiltration from the DNC by Russia or by anybody else. Sometimes we have really good indications, really solid technical evidence of exfiltration, but we have no concrete evidence of this now. Okay, now that was the cornerstone of Russiagate when it all started out way back in early January 2017, right? And all of a sudden, poof, they don't have any evidence. Now, we had been challenging that for a long period of time, but we never thought we'd get the head of CrowdStrike, which was the firm that James Comey, in his innocence, deferred to look into the DNC computers. The FBI should have done their own work, of course. So, head of CrowdStrike says there was no Russian hack. Now, that was the 5th of December, 2017. The committee kept that secret until May 7th, 2020. Do the arithmetic. No whistleblowers, no leaks, no nothing between December 5, 2017 and May 7, 2020. Now, today is what, October 13 or so. So if my arithmetic is correct, last time I checked, it's been over 5 months since Adam Schiff was required to release the transcript of that hearing where Sean Henry admitted that he had no evidence. 5 months. Whoa. Now, is the New York Times going for the record here? I mean, you already had that hiatus between December 2017 and 2020. Now we have 2020 until, 5 more months. Hello, are we never going to be allowed to see that? Or for that matter, is the New York Times ever going to publish a story about this cyber tool that I mentioned before that allows the CIA to hack into any computer or server and disguise who hacked in and leave breadcrumbs, they say, telltale signs in various languages? No, because the Times is part of the system. Times is part of the media. And as you know, I'm fond of saying not only a military-industrial complex, but the military-industrial intelligence congressional media, all caps complex, because without the media, it wouldn't work, okay? The media was on the good side on Watergate. It worked. It really did work. Now it's on the side of the military-industrial congressional intelligence media, academia think tank complex. Mickey Mat rhymes with Mickey Mouse. Remember it, Mickey Mat. Okay, so the Times didn't print it. So in answer to the point you made, the American people are never going to know about this because we don't get into the media, and it's fact. It's every time I write and I refer to this, I include the link, the URL to the House released testimony of CrowdStrike head on December 5, 2015. So that's kind of a long story, but there's evidence par excellence that they can still sit on this stuff and not let it get out. And this is everybody's fault. The people in Congress are so afraid that the intelligence community will say, you released a secret. You released a secret and it endangered XYZ, okay? They're so afraid of that they're really intimidated more than most workers. And I have an example. Okay, Dick Durbin, who I used to think was a good guy, senator from Illinois. When all this business about weapons of mass destruction was being raised in Congress, the House, and the Senate, he admitted later on that, he knew there were no weapons of mass destruction. I mean, it was very clear, but it was classified. He couldn't tell anybody. As he put it, you go into this room and they swear you to secrecy and they don't let you take notes or take anything out of there. But it was all a hoax. It was BS. There were no weapons of mass destruction, but I couldn't tell anybody. Now, there's something wrong with that. Congressmen and representatives and senators have some kind of immunity where they can release these secrets on the House or Senate floor, but they're too afraid to do that. Which, the conclusion of all this is, who's running this country? Now, in answer to what Andrew just said, okay, so Trump says, all right, the jig's up. Ratcliffe, I want you to release total information on Russiagate. No redactions. 3 exclamation points. Do it. That's his email. That was 5 days ago. Okay. Now, I wrote a piece that said Trump orders release of these documents without redactions. Period. So what? The security services can and do slow walk this stuff. They've been doing it for months and years. Okay. That's why, that's one reason why John Durham, is supposed to be investigating all this stuff. Well, he realized he only has half of what he needs. But as Trump says, you got enough. Release it. Indict somebody. What's the matter with you, Bill Barr, Attorney General? Why don't you just do it? Well, the answer is, we're not going to do it. And Trump said, well, why not? And they say, well, it's too risky. Because as Senator Schumer said on the 3rd of January, 2017, the intelligence community has 6 ways from Sunday to get you. And so, as Schumer put it, Trump has done a very dangerous thing, very silly, very, very dopey thing to challenge the intelligence community. Wait a second. Who's the president of the United States? Trump is. Why hasn't he acted like president? Because he too is afraid. And now he's making all these rhetorical flourishes. I would like to see Durham do something. I mean, I think the truth should make us free. But I'm not deluded into thinking that the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray at this point, or Gina Haspel, who's still head of the CIA, who have lots of dirty linen to hide, that they got to come forward in the next 3 weeks and say, oh yeah, we've got to release this now, unredacted, or here it all is. Well, if they do that, I'll be very surprised. I don't think anybody expects that to happen.
Hey, I wanted you to know that we have a mascot.
Echo.
There's an echo. Steve.
Yeah, that's a hell of an echo.
It's gone.
There you go.
It's been called our Mickey Mascot, and I would like to put it up on the share screen here real quick. If I can find it. I think this will be it. Yes. That right there is our Mickey
Cute.
Mascot.
Mickey mascot?
Mickey Mascot.
Mickey mascot. Right.
I need that on a shirt.
That looks good. Yeah, that's not a gas mask. That's preventing anybody from saying something, right?
I love that.
I love that picture. I do, and the artist is fantastic. There's the artist who made that image. I think his name's Ron English. I'm pretty sure it's Ron English. But he's got a ton of other just incredible images that I've wiled away several moments scrolling through. I get a kick out of that every time.
Could you send that one to me?
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I definitely need that on a shirt.
Andrew, does that answer your question? There's lots more to say about this, but
It does, and I just hope that he'll actually order arrests and that Bill Barr will actually listen and that these people will be held accountable for even just this, if not going back to the war crimes committed and all those other things as he takes on the intelligence community, because otherwise he's just complicit in the expansion of it. And so I just hope that we'll see a real act of government accountability in shutting down the function of these intelligence organizations, especially with the precedent being set that the email scanning that Edward Snowden revealed was illegal and things like that moving forward. I did want to get your opinion, though, because Tulsi Gabbard and Representative Massey released a whole bunch of new legislation. I believe there's 4 pieces total addressing Julian's situation, Edward Snowden's situation, and the Espionage Act. And I was just wondering if you had any comments on that.
well, part of their case is to allow people to actually speak in their own defense and to use a greater good argument. The greater good of society needs this kind of thing. Am I right about that, Andrew?
Yep. And the bill that was actually written, I don't know the number, but the one about Julian's situation is one of the most detailed retellings that I've seen put into an actual document in a long time about what Julian's gone through for the last decade. So that may be worth a read as well. I can send you the links to the house.com website for it.
Well, people have said to me, where does anyone, Ed Snowden or anyone, get off releasing classified information? And don't they swear an oath to keep this to keep it secret? And I say no. So what do you mean? Of course they do. I said no, they don't. They sign a piece of paper. They sign a piece of paper which says I pledge to not release information that would imperil the national security. Okay. All right. Now, do they take an oath? Oh, they don't take an oath? Yeah, they do take an oath. That's why I'm in this business, okay? I was an Army officer first, and I took a solemn oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, This is not something small. This is not something that has an expiration date. Okay? It's just something that binds us to the Constitution, the bedrock of our democracy. And we see people fooling around, playing light with the Constitution. We see the head of the FBI, the head of CIA, head of NSA, and the head of national intelligence playing fast and loose with the Constitution because they don't like Trump, and they do like Hillary, and they don't want Trump in there, and they do everything they can to prevent Trump from getting elected. And then once he is elected, do everything they can to make sure that he's emasculated, okay? Well, when that happens, we have a duty, we veteran intelligence professionals for sanity, that's the way we look at it anyway, to expose the truth. Now, the irony of all this, and you probably know what I'm getting at, I have a really good friend just last week said, hey, I'm trading votes, I'm hoping to get people who are for Trump not to vote, and they'll pair off with somebody who's for Biden and they won't vote either, okay? Now, would you be willing? I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, aren't you going to vote for Trump? I said, my God, what are you, crazy? Trump is antithetical to everything I believe as a Democrat, as a small Democrat, small d, as a Christian, as someone who comes out of a biblical tradition, Judeo-Christian, the prophet as well. What did they care about? They cared about the widow, the orphan, the refugee, okay? And that's the way I measure a government. They care about little people. Now, I happen to be a believer, okay? And my theology can be summed up in a little sentence that was given to me by a really good Jesuit friend. He said, it all depends on who you think God is and how God feels when little people get pushed around. It all depends on who you think God is and how God feels when little people get pushed around. Well, what I've seen too much in the last half of my lifetime is little people get pushed around wherever they tend to exist on this on this earth, and I'm tired of it. And now when I see most Americans being pushed around, the last thing I want to do is see any more of that. Do I like Joe Biden? My God. Well, we talk about lesser evils. There's no way I could ever vote for Donald Trump. And the notion that somebody very perspicacious and a good friend thought I might, I said, why do you think I might do that? And they said, well, because you say some things that agree with him. I said, well, my God, does no one understand that there is such a thing as objective truth and that the truth really will set us free? And if it helps Donald Trump, well, whose fault is that, for God's sake? Who did this stuff, So, in realpolitik terms, I'm going to cease and desist now. I don't want my children accusing me of helping Donald Trump. I'm on the record as to all the things that these clowns did to prevent him from being president and then from emasculating him from doing things. And I hold no brief for Donald Trump. And, I would suggest that everyone listening to this, in case they had the slightest doubt, that I would suggest that Trump would be good for another 4 years. That could not be farther from the truth. So for what that's worth, I need to get that on the record. People have been calling, my old friends call me Putin in Putin's pocket and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they've lost their marbles. There's just too much at stake. There's too much cognitive dissonance sometimes with the reputable institutions that they used to work in. They can't believe that the CIA and the FBI do these kinds of things, and they don't have the evidence because the media won't print it.
I have a very good friend that I've known, I guess, since I first started coming to California, so like 1992. And I made the mistake of going onto Facebook over the weekend, and I had a link to a tweet that Caitlin Johnstone had composed, and and the tweet was, I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember it exactly, but what she was saying is Trump isn't an existential threat. The status quo is an existential threat. Trump is the current face of the status quo. He's who you meet at the status quo's, lobby. Thinking that getting rid of Trump will solve this problem is like thinking firing the secretary at a corrupt corporation is going to solve the corporation's problems. So I posted that, and my friend, in about 8 different ways, wanted to let me know that I was doing Vladimir Putin's work, and that I was, carrying water for them damn Ruskies, and I was just like, man, I'm gonna come visit you in Hawaii, and you're gonna say that to my face. Like, not because I'm trying to get violent or anything like that. I'm not a violent man anymore. And I just want to see if, like, person to person, you genuinely feel like this, or if this is you, trying to slap your dick on the internet. Like, I gotta know. I do. And then he starts talking about, like, oh, well, if you come to visit me in Hawaii, we could go here and we could hang out here and we could have this, and I know there's a great restaurant and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I fucking thought, dude. Come on. Like, why would you let what the TV tells you rule how you act on the internet if you're not going to act like that in person?
Why is he wanting to take you on a date if he thinks you're working for Vladimir Putin?
Maybe he thinks that he can. His aunt and uncle in Hawaii are apparently really good friends with Rachel Maddow, and Maddow comes and visits his aunt and uncle when she goes to Hawaii.
That explains so much.
So what I'm thinking is that he's going to tell his aunt and uncle that I'm coming, and Maddow is going to call the CIA, or the FBI. And as soon as I touch ground in Hawaii, I'm gonna get black bagged.
Listen, Lord Putin is very powerful, Steve. He is very powerful.
We had a super chat from the Convo Couch come in, and it's a question for Ray. They said, amazing show. Thank you, Ray McGovern, for your knowledge. What possible avenues can be used to have these intelligence agencies be held accountable?
That's a really tough question. The law says that the intelligence committees in the House and Senate are supposed to monitor these activities and are supposed to be given enough information from these agencies to be able to effectively supervise them. Now, they're called the oversight committees. And when they were first set up after the hearings there in the mid-70s, they really were, the oversight, they look over the stuff, and now they've become the oversight committees, which is the synonym for overlook committees, and they're too afraid to ask the questions. Now, picture this. One of my last pieces showed that when this warrant was gotten for Carter Page, right? The FBI used incomplete and deceptive information to warrant the warrant, so to speak, which approved it. And everybody thinks, oh, gosh, that was awful. Carter Page, he's being monitored, surveilled, and wiretapped and all. But that ain't it, folks. This surveillance is a 2-hop deal. Now, let me explain, okay? You approve surveillance, wiretapping, everything else wiretapping. That's the old, electronic surveillance on Carter Page, and then 1 hop, whoever he is in touch with. Oh, now let's say he calls the White House. Let's say he talks to the president. Then you can monitor everything that contact has, everything the president is communicating. And not only that, but if the president calls somebody else, Well, that's the second hop. Now, let's say the president Googles something. That second hop entitles the NSA or the FBI access to the 1.5 billion people who have internet capabilities in this world. In other words, a good slice of the rest of the world. So, surveilling Carter Page seems like a kind of discreet thing. Oh, too bad, Carter. So it's not done. It was done bad. But what you're talking about is the laws that were approved by Barack Obama. Okay. And his approval caused great rejoicing at the National Security Agency, and I know this for a fact. Why? Because it allowed and encouraged two-hop surveillance. Carter Page, everybody that Carter Page is in touch with, and then everybody that they're in touch with. And so it could be limitless if an institution like Google was included in just one of those hops. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the Congress people all know, well, they all know, most of them know this. And so there's incredible blackmail potential for them. And they know how the thing is run. And they know that when James Comey on the 6th of January, 2017, when he met with President-elect Trump and said, now, Mr. Trump, we have this memo which says that Putin really helps you become president next week. But we also have this, dossier. It's scurrilous, and it's, we can't prove it, but it says that you've been cavorting with prostitutes in Moscow. And we just want to let you know that we have it. And actually, we know the press has it. And so it might come out, but just so you know, Mr. President, just so you know. Now, that's J. Edgar Hoover on steroids. Every incoming president, every president-elect is subjected to that by J. Edgar Hoover and his successors. Just so you know, Mr. President, just so you know, we have this. Now, what did Trump do? Well, he's from New York. That's not the way they do real estate, right? And so he didn't know what was happening to him until 4 months later when he finally confessed to the New York Times, Comey was trying to get a handle on me. He was trying to get leverage. He was trying to get blackmail material. That's what that was all about. So it's not just this or that little congressperson, congresswoman, congressman, or senator. It's everybody. It includes the president of the United States. And that's why they're so leery about crossing the intelligence community. And that's precisely why Rachel Maddow invited Chuck Schumer on the 3rd of January 2017 on her show. And she said, Chuck, you have something to tell me. Yes, Rachel, it's very serious. Well, what is it? It's about the intelligence. Why is Trump is just really criticizing the intelligence community? And Schumer says, yes, Rachel, it's very foolish. I thought he was a pretty smart businessman, but he's done something very foolish indeed. He doesn't know, apparently, that the intelligence community has 6 ways from Sunday to get at you, and they're going to do it. It's very, very okay. And that's the 3rd of January. What happened on the 5th of January? On the 5th of January, Obama got together all his intelligence guys and some of the staffers and said, okay, now what are we going to do about this community assessment? And what are we going to do about Flynn? And what are we going to do about the Steele dossier? And Obama blessed how the FBI and the Justice Department would proceed on that. And so it's Obama's responsibility in the first instance to give the green light to this kind of activity. And, just to show how much courage Obama has, 2 days before he left, he got up at a press conference and said, Russia hacking, well, the community, intelligence community says they've decided that Russian hacking was really a problem. But I have to tell you that we don't know how the Russian hacking got to WikiLeaks. Our conclusions on that are inconclusive. So despite the intelligence community briefing that he got on the 5th, he felt he had to protect his derriere by saying the intelligence community's conclusions on this incredibly important matter, namely how these Russian hacks, which we know didn't happen now, got the WikiLeaks, were inconclusive. Inconclusive conclusions, says Obama, and then he waltzes into the sunset. Well, that's not courage. He didn't have the guts himself to face down these guys. And Brennan always had a hold on Obama, and I have 6 ways from Sunday to show that.
So, Ray, I always appreciate having you on and having you join us. We're about to get into the El Masri statement that came out during Julian's trial, but I do want to give you a chance to give some final thoughts and let people know where to find you and your website.
Oh, and expect an email from me probably this evening with the Mickey Matt Scott.
That would be helpful. Yeah. Well, I just like to, my website, before I forget to say it, is raymcgovern.com. Not very hard to remember. Ray McGovern, no space or anything, .com. Let me very briefly, in case there are people watching this who have access to major crimes or things like plans for war. Let's say somebody in the Pentagon now who is privy to planning for some dust up with Russia or with Iran or with Venezuela before the election. It's time to take advantage of whatever possibility there is to get that information out, even though there's great risk attended to that. I didn't do that when I knew stuff about Vietnam that could have been published, because in those days, the New York Times really would publish these things. So in summary, if you took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, then that is what ethicists call a supervening value, okay? Supervening, meaning if you signed a piece of paper saying you wouldn't divulge classified information, well, that's okay. That's important. Do we lightly do that? No, we don't lightly do that. But are there supervening values here? There sure as hell are, okay? And it's your oath to the Constitution that should control, okay? So do us a favor. Show us a little courage. You have incredible examples to follow. Dan Ellsberg being one, Ed Snowden being another, Chelsea Manning being another, and of course our friend Julian Assange being the premier example of this. So summon the courage to do it. There are lots of ways you can do it now that are less risky than the way Dan Ellsberg did it by his Xerox machine. And with that, I just leave you and do suggest that you look at my website. My son, who runs it, always says, "Dad, don't just say the website, always say our little motto." I said, what that is, if you don't get it, you don't get it.
That's perfect.
Good night, all. Thanks for the good work that you do.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray. So if you guys have been with us since the conclusion of Julian's extradition hearing, you will know that each vigil from now until the end of closing arguments, we're going to be going through closing arguments being November 16th. We're going to be going through a witness statement per vigil. That may not happen, by the way, on Saturday, because we'll have both Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett, and we may just spend that time with them. I don't know. I really like, none of this is fucking planned out, you guys. We try to plan some shit out. It doesn't even fucking, it doesn't happen. So what you've seen for the past 67 weeks is us winging it at our level best. For good or ill. That's what it is. I'm almost 100% positive that all necessary links for this are in the description right now. Tarek Haddad, our friend and friend of the show, has a section on his website called the Archives. There you can find every submitted witness statement in the September hearing. You can also find the skeleton arguments for both the prosecution and the defense. It is a massive collection of information, and Tarek is just provided all of us with an incredible resource in that. So TarekHaddad.com, HADDAD. Tarek is TAREQ. And yeah, just peruse those if you get bored. Oh my god, you can kill your boredom really easily with that. So without any more delay,
Yeah, that really is an amazing resource. And if you guys want to hop on Twitter and thank him for doing that, it's a huge undertaking to compile all of that and make sure that it gets in. And when he put it out, he even apologized for it taking too long. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, this is amazing. It's a wealth of information. And
and he originally had 2 weeks worth of statements that were published, or that he did publish, and then after the third week, that kind of like broke most of us. He waited until after the fourth week was finished before he went back to it, because I mean, really, honestly, none of us really wanted to discuss any of that.
Yeah,
it was incredibly heavy and pretty fucking miserable.
well, and even putting in the effort while you're trying to cover the case and you have to hear all of these things in court, and I'm sure that's a lot to handle. And just, I mean, being exhausted. I mean, the people who were covering that case, it was a lot of hard work. I mean, kudos to all of them.
So tonight's...
I was going to say, are we going to pull up the statement first, or were we going to pull up the articles first?
The two articles that I pulled from, the Craig Murray one gives like a very good kind of summary of the treatment that Al-Masri went through. And then the Shadowproof article is more of how this testimony can be used by Julian's defense. Yeah. So those are the two articles I chose to kind of go through. But either...
worth going through the articles first, because it really frames it, and then going into what happened in court with the censorship and then the statement itself.
All right, which one first?
The consortium news piece, Craig Murphy, consortium.
What's up?
Okay, so and again, you can find the full article. It's linked in the description. Consortium News has picked up a number of Craig Murray's blog posts from the trial just to republish them. And this particular one is Khalid Al-Masri, of Lebanese origin, had come to Germany in 1989 and was a German citizen. On January 1st, 2004, after a holiday in Skopje, he had been removed from a coach on the Macedonian border. He had been held incommunicado by Macedonian officials, ill-treated and beaten. On July 23rd, he'd been taken to the Skopje airport and handed over to CIA operatives. They had beaten, shackled, hooded, and sodomized him. His clothes had been ripped off, and he had been dressed in a diaper, shackled to the floor of an aircraft in a cruciform position, and rendered unconscious by an anesthetic injection. By the way, and we're going to get into this when we cover the statement, but this was all a fucking case of mistaken identity, and the CIA damn near tortured a man to death over it. He awoke in what he eventually learned was Afghanistan. He was held incommunicado in a bare concrete cell with a bucket for a toilet. He was held for 6 months and interrogated throughout this period. Details of torture were excluded by concierge to the U.S. State Department District Judge Vanessa Baratzer. Eventually, in June, he was flown to Albania, driven blindfolded up a remote mountain road, and dumped. When he eventually got back to Germany, his home was deserted and his wife and children had left. Let's see. I think it's this one. No, that's Shadowproof. Is it you? There was a third one that I... God damn it. Does anybody have the third one up?
I think there's only two.
There's
from
only
the
two.
Craig-
Oh,
no,
there were. Okay.
I think there was 2 from the Craig Murray article and 3 from Shadowproof, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And by the way, Amanda, way to go. Those are way to go.
Right, those are absolutely beautiful.
Yes, great work.
So, as always, big shout out to Josh and Kimber for helping out behind the scenes and making all this possible. We literally couldn't do what we're doing if it wasn't for them helping out. So, big thank you to them.
Yeah, but that was like just a really good kind of summation of his
No,
treatment.
there is one more.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, I think.
I even put these together and I don't even know what the hell.
There's 2 consortium news ones and 3. You only went through the first consortium one.
Okay, fine.
Oh, no, there was a third one. Or no, wait.
It's in the show doc.
Yeah, there is a third one. It just talks about there being no accountability and stuff from the CIA.
There were no 3 slides, so either.
Okay,
I didn't
yeah, there
download
wasn't
it.
a third slide, but there was a third screenshot, and that's in the show
Yeah,
doc.
I didn't set that up.
All
Yeah,
good.
it's fine. Yeah, no big deal. I think the 2 that we went over were the 2 that I thought were most important, just to give people a general idea of the treatment that he endured. And again, like Steve said, this is mistaken identity. This guy, not that they have a right to do this to anybody, but this isn't even the guy they were looking for. It's crazy what he had to go through.
And just as a little point of reference for everyone, we'll get into it when we're actually in the statement, but he's literally just a retail food employee. Like, he's not anyone of significance or of special importance or of political. He's literally just a guy that was on vacation that got scooped up. So it just, like, knowing that going into all of it is just fucking crazy, especially because of the utter lack of justice surrounding the whole situation.
Well, that's a good point, actually. Like, think about that for a minute. You go on vacation, you're on your way home, you're tired, you just want to get home, sleep in your own bed, see your wife, see your kids, get back to your routine. And then all of a sudden you're, kidnapped and tortured and held, against your will, and you have no idea what's going on, and you're, transported to different countries. And I mean, that's crazy to think about, that you can just be scooped up like that, treated in that manner, and then nothing happens to the people that did that to you. And, there's no recourse. And and if it weren't for WikiLeaks, his situation most likely would still be hidden, that nobody would know about what happened to him.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate.
I think your video died, Misty.
Interesting.
If we can go into the Good Kevin's article. There you are, Misty.
Hi.
It's not showing me for some reason.
I see you.
You may have to
She's on screen.
Do you want me to hop
Maybe.
out, Sleepy?
Yeah, hop out, hop back in.
Okay, I'll be back.
In case Burmis is watching, we do it live here, everybody.
The slide's up.
We have to say it 3 times to summon him.
We do. It's like Burmis juice.
Okay. So this slide that's up right now is the 3rd slide from the, correct. So, and this is what we sort of just touched on, but let me read down here real quick. God, where'd it go? There had been no accountability in the USA. The CIA Inspector General had declined to take action over the case. The ECHR, European Court of Human Rights, judgment and supporting documentation had been sent off to the office of the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, precisely the same office that was now attempting to extradite Assange, and that office had declined to prosecute the CIA officers concerned. A complaint had been made to the ICC, including the European Court of Human Rights judgment and the WikiLeaks material. In March 2020, the ICC announced it was opening an investigation. In response, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had declared any non-U.S. citizen who cooperated with the ICC including officers of the ICC, would be subject to financial and other sanctions. This is the U.S. Secretary of State threatening the International Criminal Court if they decided to move forward with a very clear case of torturing a human being under a mistaken identity. And the United States position, their first position, not their fallback, their opening position is, we'll levy sanctions on the International Criminal Court officers if they go ahead and move with this, and there will be other serious repercussions.
Hi, I think I'm back now, right?
You are back now.
Okay.
You're back. Your camera is working.
Yay. I'm
But
better
yeah.
when I'm not frozen.
Pompeo literally going as far as to say that he'll go after the families of International Criminal Court members for their relatives investigating U.S. war crimes, specifically the al-Masri event.
Yeah. That's what the Secretary of State does in the land of the free.
Home of the brave.
All right, I've got the
Yeah.
shadowproof one up.
Home of the brave. We're going to go after your wife and kids because we're the home of the brave. It's what the brave do. Go after women and children. It's in the Bible. So again, the link to the shadowproof article should be in the description. I don't know if I have the right slide up or not.
I think it's
the first one.
Al-Masri's testimony directly relates to the defense argument that Assange published classified information from the United States in order to reveal abuses and misconduct such as torture and war crimes. In the UK, Assange's legal team has been allowed to enter this into evidence into the public record. However, during a potential trial in the US, it will likely be excluded as irrelevant because the Espionage Act does not allow a public interest defense. Imagine proof of torture and war crimes being dismissed as irrelevant because in that particular courtroom, the public has no right to know that torture and war crimes take place. Let's see. I'm going to skip that paragraph. The charges criminalize the act of merely receiving classified information as well as the publication of state secrets from the U.S. government. It targets common practices in news gathering, which is why the case is widely opposed by press freedom organizations throughout the world. And then this jumps into John Getz's testimony. And by the way, John Getz from Der Spiegel testified the exact same day that Khalid al-Masri was supposed to testify. So on September 16th, John Getz, a German journalist who worked for Der Spiegel from 2010 to 2011, provided a statement to the court to help reinforce al-Masri's testimony. The investigation into what happened to him was as difficult as anything I have worked on. It was only years later, when WikiLeaks published U.S. diplomatic cables in 2010 and 2011, that I finally found an explanation about why there were so many difficulties during the investigation. It revealed not only that, oh, motherfuck, why did this jump? It does that. My computer will just jump, just leap right in the middle of a sentence. It's great. Now it's moving rapidly. That's awesome. We do it live.
I mean, I can jump in if you want. And
yeah, sure. If you got it in front of you, please do. Bail my ass out.
Where were you at here? Let's see. So the investigation into what happened to him was as difficult as anything I have worked on, Getz declared. It was only years later, when WikiLeaks published U.S. diplomatic cables in 2010-2011, that I finally found an explanation about why there were so many difficulties during the investigation. It revealed not only that significant information had been suppressed, but I finally understood why there were no repercussions when that information was revealed. The U.S. diplomatic cables revealed the extent of pressure brought upon the German authorities and in parallel relevant Spanish authorities not to act upon the clear evidence of criminal acts by the USA, even though by then exposed, Getz added. As is clear from his statements, Getz stated, al-Masri's ordeal did not end in 2004 after he found himself again in Germany. I have maintained contact with Mr. al-Masri since the time of my investigation, and confirm, in addition to the accuracy of his account and his rendition and torture in 2004, that what he describes of his frustrated quest for acknowledgement by those in a position to do so can also be corroborated. Every impediment has been and continues to be placed on the appropriate resolution and conclusion of his case, including acceptance and responsibility by the primary perpetrator of the atrocities against him, the USA. So that's basically just saying that, yes, since he even got released from, this torture chamber run by the CIA, he still has to deal with the ramifications. Again, he's mistaken identity, but he still has to deal with, being followed and being spied on and all of this other stuff, which is, just re-traumatizing him over and over and over again. So I think that just speaks to how far they're willing to go, really.
Well, and how little give a damn they have.
Yes. But why should they? There's never repercussions. So it's not like they have anything to fear, which is why it's so important for people to talk about this, because if they have to do it right out in the open in front of everybody, people are going to start to pay more attention to it, I think. You would hope, anyway.
And they even went as far to censor the statements and the discussion of the statements in the courtroom itself. So the Action for Assange community got credited with pressuring the UK into starting what's called their cloud video platform, which was essentially a tool that journalists use to connect, to have a live video feed to the courtroom. There was a lot of awesome journalists that did live tweeting during that time. But that was the one connection to the outside world that the court had, really, because COVID restriction essentially shut down the courtroom for the most part. Like, there was a very limited number of observers. But I'm going to screen share this here real quick and run through these. It's not as high quality as Kimber's, so I apologize. Hers are absolutely beautiful. Mine is, I know how to make a PowerPoint presentation. But this first article here, apparently, this first tweet, this is from September 16th. This was the day that they were discussing witness statements in court, 2 days before El Masri was set to testify. Apparently, the court has resumed, but the press video feed is still down, citing James Dolman's tweet there. We understand that the press following remotely has missed discussions over the administration of El Masri's statements. The prosecution does not want to accept for the record that El Masri's was tortured by the U.S. government. It continues. The remote press is still missing this important debate on the statements from Khalid Al Masri's kidnapped and tortured by the CIA. The statement from Al Masri, a German citizen who was seized by the CIA and transferred to the U.S. military black prison in Afghanistan. The press video feed comes back, and then the conversation on Al Masri's statement had just ended before the press got back into the cloud video platform. Apparently, they'll be addressing this again later this afternoon, and then proceeded with court trying to get Daniel Ellsberg to connect. The day that El Masri was supposed to testify, this is September 18th. I believe this was day 9 in court. Back in the courtroom, but with tech issues with the video link testimony persists, talking about El Masri's video link being able to actually join in to testify in the courtroom. Summers says it would be nice if they could use Zoom or Teams. The court's own video system is much more difficult to use. The prosecution says they will have very little cross-examination of El Masri. They don't object to his testifying, but they don't want to stipulate that he was tortured and rendered by the U.S. government. Talking about the defense and prosecution can agree on regard to the El Masri statement, particularly objecting to the claims that the U.S. government placed pressure on the German government regarding the arrest warrant of El Masri for his kidnapping and torture. The defense just wants the judge to acknowledge that this is what the WikiLeaks cables revealed, not necessarily whether this is what happened or not, although this is what the Strasbourg court has acknowledged. The judge says, I don't think there is a dispute that is what was in the cables. The prosecution says, we do not agree that that's what the Strasbourg court said. And this is where Julian actually speaks up in courtroom, I believe, for the third time. He says, I will not allow the second time. Julian speaks from the dock saying, I will not allow censor a torture victim statement to this court. I am trying to convey those instructions clearly. I will not accept that. The judge again tells Julian to be quiet. It appears that they provided the gist of El-Masri's statements rather than having him testify live. The interpreter had been in the courtroom and she has been dismissed. Defense lawyer Mark Summers begins talking about El-Masri's statements, stops, says he's being instructed to stop, and the court is put on a brief recess. So that was what was happening in court while they were trying to actually discuss his testimony and get El-Masri connected. And then Julian literally had to go as far as to say, I will not allow a torture victim to be censored, risking literally getting thrown out of courtroom in and of itself if Vanessa Vereitzer had followed through with what she was threatening to do in the first place.
Something I find really interesting is that they had technical difficulties with other witnesses, and rather than, just, jump into reading a statement rather than let them testify, they figured out the tech issues and came back to that witness. So it's very interesting to me that the one guy that they're like, oh, we have tech issues, so we're just going to read this statement, is the torture victim.
Yeah.
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 Very interesting.
That's real convenient.
Right? I'm sure that's just a coincidence.
After there was a huge point of contention about him testifying in the first place and what the prosecution wouldn't allow. And Joe Laurie is right, though. There's no way we would have heard any of this had it taken place in a U.S. courtroom.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. He's absolutely right about that.
But
so in a way, I'm kind of glad this happened in London, in Belmarsh, because had he just been shoved into a U.S. court, this would have never come to light at all. And again, we would have never even known what happened to El-Masri without WikiLeaks.
You don't need to screen share anymore, Andrew. You can't see part of the content.
No, okay.
But we do have screenshots in the show doc that are from Khalid El-Masri's statement, and as soon as it loads back up, I will be happy to go through them, or maybe Misty can if they're in front of her.
I can.
I'm getting there.
Oh, hold on. I went too far. I'm a little scroll happy. Whoa. Whoa, I really went way too far down. The hell?
Come here, you fuck. It's a race now. It's a contest.
Right?
Ha!
Okay, so no, I got it. I got it. You can go. Go. Ready, set, go.
He says, I'm a German citizen. At the end of 2003, I was traveling through Europe on a bus at the Macedonian border. I was kidnapped, first detained without reason, held incommunicado, and severely ill-treated for 23 days. As mild. Until the 23rd January 2004. I was handcuffed and blindfolded at the Skopje airport, handed to a CIA rendition team who physically overwhelmed me, cutting off all my clothes except my blindfold. Motherfuck, it skipped. I make this statement in these proceedings because the WikiLeaks publications were relied on by the European court in obtaining the redress I received. And if it will... There we go. The Grand Chamber of the European Court of Human Rights 9 years later made a series of findings confirming that the following had in fact occurred, and that El-Masri was, quote, severely beaten, sodomized, shackled, and hooded and subjected to total sensory deprivation, carried out in the presence of state officials of Macedonia and within its jurisdiction. As a result of that treatment and my prior detention in Macedonia, the Grand Chamber found that Macedonia's, quote, government was consequently responsible for those acts performed by by foreign officials. Those measures had been used with premeditation, the aim being to cause Mr. Masri severe pain and suffering in order to obtain information. In the court's view, such treatment had amounted to torture in violation of Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Those actions were only the beginning. When my blindfold was eventually removed, I was temporarily blinded by the bright light of flash photography. When I recovered my sight, I saw 7 or 8 men dressed head to foot in black, wearing black masks. They dressed me in a diaper and a tracksuit with a bag over my head and earmuffs. I was shackled and marched to a waiting aircraft. On the plane, I was spread-eagled and my limbs tied to the sides of the aircraft. I was given injections and an anesthetic. I was unconscious for most of the journey. I much later discovered that by this time, the CIA knew that my detention was the result of mistaken identity and that I should be released. I was nevertheless held for several more months. Can you fucking imagine knowing that that it's mistaken identity? You know that you're a grocery store clerk in Germany. And now you know that your captors and torturers also know that you're a grocery store clerk in Germany. And you're not some terrorist fucking mastermind. And they still keep you for months. By the end of May 2004, an American who identified himself as a psychologist promised me I would soon be released. He told me that he had traveled from Washington, D.C. to Czech. Soon thereafter, I was interrogated again by the native German speaker named Sam, the American prison director, and an American translator. I was warned as a condition of my release that I was never to mention what happened to me and that there would be consequences if I spoke. On approximately 28th May 2004, I was blindfolded and handcuffed and let out of my cell. I was handed the suitcase I had arrived with in Skopje and told to change back into the clothes I had arrived with in Macedonia. I was given 2 new t-shirts. I was taken to an aircraft, blindfolded, earmuffed, and chained to the seat. The German speaker who had visited me in prison, Sam, accompanied me. He told me that the plane would land in a European country, not Germany, and that I would eventually come home to Germany.
Can I just stop you for a second? Because can we comment on how ridiculous it is? Maybe it's just because of the way you read it just now, but I got 2 free t-shirts. It's like I was tortured by the CIA and all I got was
this stupid.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why that just struck me as just really absurd right now.
Yeah, but don't forget the PTSD. The PTSD is free with the second t-shirt.
Yeah. It's so absurd.
I wonder what the shirts were, as terrible as it sounds, like what they had printed on them before they gave them to
It was
they gotta be just like off the rack. I had a vacation in Macedonia.
You know how they go ahead and print both teams for the Super Bowl, and then whoever wins, they get to pass their shirts out, and whoever loses, they send those to like third world countries. That's probably what he got.
Right. So you had like Buffalo Bills Super Bowl champions 1997.
Right.
Yeah. Holy fuck, man. It jumped on me. God damn it.
If I could jump to a part in this, I don't know if we have the slide or not for it, but this is line number 19. And it's El Masri talking about his personal life. I and my family have Lebanese roots. I've lived in Germany at times, the events of 2003 and 2004 for effectively all my adult life, almost 20 years. I was a man of exemplary character. The traumatic experience that followed my return to Germany intensified and left me unable to understand how and why I was treated in the ways that followed. Disbelieved, humiliated, and subjected to forms of oppressive behavior. When in 2010 and 11, WikiLeaks published the U.S. diplomatic cables, it became clear what pressures had taken place beyond Macedonia's collusion with the United States. The Deputy Chief Mission of Germany in February 2007 warned the German Deputy Secretary, Ralph Nickel, in terms that the issuance of international arrest warrants would have a negative impact on our binary relationship. He reminded Nickel of the repercussions of the U.S.-Italian binary relationship in the wake of a similar move by the Italian authorities the year before. And that is part of the evidence packet that he submitted, was that particular WikiLeaks file.
So it's gonna be slightly redundant, but moving to the next section, and I believe this is the second to the last. As a result of the cables published by WikiLeaks, it is now known, but was not at the time in 2006, that the German government bowed to pressure from the U.S. government to not seek the extradition of the rendition team. Similarly, as a result of WikiLeaks cables, it is known that the U.S. had interfered to block a judicial investigation in Germany and similarly intervened in Spain, the rendition flight in question having traveled from Palma Airport in Spain. I do not set out here all of the misleading and untrue statements made by a number of authorities suggesting that it was appropriate to disbelieve my allegations and undermine my claims. Intimidation upon me and witnesses was manifest throughout. Despite the institution in Germany of a parliamentary investigation as a result of media scrutiny, impediments were erected to my ability to ascertain the truth, including via witnesses whose details I had learned in prison in Afghanistan. Other incidents caused me fear, being suddenly blocked on a motorway by cars, unknown strangers approaching my children, my complaints to the police leading their attempting to section me in a hospital for the mentally ill. He says he was violently restrained just for going to the cops to tell them about what had happened to them. The CIA had told me in Afghanistan that they would monitor me after my release, and is in fact also mentioned in the Officer of the Inspector General's report. This is a direct quote, and I'm glad it's up on the screen right now. The following evening, these officers met again with al-Masri and related conditions for his release, which included that he would not reveal his experiences to the media or local authority, that he would accept that his post-release activities would be monitored, and that any breach of his pledge would have consequences. And there's one more, which is just, I'm fucked. It was when I came, huh?
I was just going to say the most.
We have 5 minutes, Andrew, so make it short.
Yeah, the most gut-wrenching part of the whole statement by al-Masri is the part where he talks about when he finally was able to call his wife for the first time. And basically she's like just brought to silence and can't even fathom to speak and what words to say because her husband just vanished and then reappeared months later like a ghost. Like they had up and moved to a different country.
Yeah.
And she had finally got back he had finally been able to get back in contact with her.
And again, you can find the entire statement at tariqhaddad.com in the archives. It was when my case against the CIA in the U.S. was aborted as a result of the U.S. asserting state secret privilege that I realized the extent of the lawlessness that I was up against. I had brought my case, told my story, and the American government knew I was speaking the truth. Yet I never even received an acknowledgement, and my life was and remains in tatters. I see that the CIA Inspector General recommended that the matter be referred to the Department of Justice for consideration. I observed that prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia made a decision not to bring any prosecution. The ACLU initiated a case on my behalf against the U.S. before both the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and the International Criminal Court. My complaint included the Grand Chamber judgment and therefore, in the body of its evidence, the WikiLeaks publications. I have learned that in March 2020, when the ICC, which I am told is the court of last resort when governments cannot or will not investigate grave crimes, U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo has stated, his statement followed by the authority of an executive order, that extreme measures will be taken against the ICC, its prosecutor, and her family against anyone involved in bringing cases to the court which would cause the U.S. to be the subject of the investigation.
And it continues, just the last two lines are the closing of this. He says, I record my belief that without dedication and brave exposure of state secrets in question, what happened to me would have never been acknowledged and understood. I nevertheless observe with fear of what is to come. The threats and intimidation are not diminishing, but expecting for all of us concerned. I nevertheless believe that the exposure of what happened was necessary, not just for myself, but for law and justice worldwide. My story is not yet concluded.
But the show is, because I have a hard out in about 2 minutes. I will be I will be live on Jason Burmis's show in about 8 minutes after that. I had promised him that I would be on to talk about what happened to Vanessa and Eva Bartlett. And my day got fucking sideways. So this is when that's gonna happen. So
Cool.
we're about to wrap.
Let's just close it up. Yeah.
I would like to thank everybody for joining us. I'd like to thank Ray McGovern for hopping on, Sleepy Josh and Kimber for all the help behind the scenes. You can find us on Twitter at action_4Assange or action4Assange on YouTube. Our calls to action are in the description down below. Thank you guys.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I have another show called Facts on the Ground with my friend Jesse, if you guys want to check that out. And definitely go check out Steve on Jason Burmis to learn more about what's happening to Vanessa Beeley, because this does not stop with Julian Assange.
I'm Steve Poikinen, and I host a show called Slow News Day. If you're looking for it on YouTube, you type in Slow News Day Podcast into your search bar. I'm on the Rockfin ND Live as well, which I highly recommend that you guys all move to one or the other. I do have a Patreon. However, if you're supporting me on Patreon, stop that shit because I never post on it, and instead support me on Rockfin, where you get access to everybody else's premium content. It's much more beneficial use of the dollars that you spend to support independent content creators. Please join us this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, when we will be live with Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett. And then join me the following day because Fiorella Isabel will be on the show. And so I can't remember Charlie's last name. He's got a really fun show called Macroaggressions. So that'll be a good time. Until then, thanks to Ray, thanks to my co-hosts Andre, Jazz Andrew, and Misty, and Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos, me and Panda with the amazing graphics for tonight. That was fantastic. And everybody that's been watching us, we love you guys. We do. And we will see you Saturday, if not sooner. Good luck to us all.